13 Questions by Man Transcending. Manhood in the Digital Age.
Welcome back to another episode of 13 Questions Podcast. This time we are joined by Dave Robinson. But before we get into the interview portion of the show, I have with me, as always, the magnificent Adam Loyal.
How are you doing, Bill?
I'm doing wonderful, especially after this interview. This was another one that was a Mark England referral, so you know it's going to be good. And we get into a lot of interesting topics that you might not expect to that to come up in a podcast like this. But that just goes to show you that this is an interesting podcast, and we have a lot of fun here while trying to talk about some serious things and getting a little bit of work done. So, yeah, we do have a gratitude jingle that we have that Adam and I do in the intros to it's kind of a little ritual at this point, I guess, to help get the heart mind connection going and generate that love and gratitude feeling before we get into the meat of the show. So gratitude jingle is brought to you by Sir Felix Ortega. Thank you, Sir Felix. You can find all of his work at sirfelix.bandcamp.com. And
the amazing, wonderful, and the superb Felix Ortega.
Gratitude, 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 oh gratitude. Gratitude, 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 oh gratitude.
I have a inspired gratitude this time around, stemming from couple of his stories that he shared. I'm thankful for UFOs. I'm thankful for objects in the sky that we don't know what they are. This phenomena, this experience of we've not, I was gonna say we've all had this, but we haven't, right? This isn't really too common of an experience, or is it? And we just don't talk about it as often. But I've definitely seen some weird things up in the sky, and we with the interview with aliencarvings.com, the guy who curates that site a few episodes back is definitely life altering, and as was so eloquently put later on in the episode, that changes everything. So talking about different perspectives and implementing those viewpoints into our own kind of worldview and integrating them and growing from them, certainly realizing that we aren't alone, and we're certainly not the pinnacle of it all, I would say, is humbling, and it's a good thing. And so I'm grateful for that, because it makes mundane, more mundane trifles more manageable, like everyday trifles, like I don't know, whatever you're dealing with, maybe be depression or something along those lines, but getting a different perspective and realizing that maybe just how tiny we are is a load off of one's own shoulders, if that makes any sense. Does that make sense, Adam? I'm not just...
No, it makes complete sense. And, funnily enough, my gratitude is very overlapping. It is an experience. It is the same type of thing. The type of experience that opens your mind to possibilities that you have been told by others just are not possible. And once you have that freedom of going, well, what else has the world told me? What else has the world shown me? That once I've had this experience, everything changes, because I know what other people don't know. I know that there are these phenomenal experiences. He goes into some very personal experiences that he has. And much like you, I've had the same thing. I've had some things that I've seen out there that I cannot explain. An incredibly impactful moment at Contact at the Cabin. And, you know, when you experience something in the sky or something in your life that's paranormal, or you do or participate in something like remote viewing or water witching, and you find that you can do, or you have an experience that is just that powerful, it not just relieves the pressure of, you know, the constraints the world tells you, but to me, it frees your mind into the infinite possibility, you don't know everything. Things look like shit. Things look like they're falling apart. But there is much, much more to this world than you understand. And I think of it as the ocean. I can go to the beach, I can enjoy the waves, I can enjoy the sun. I can also swim down to the depths and find Architeuthis and, you know, great white sharks and any numerous amazing other whale or other things. And I think the universe is that way. And if we're just content to, you know, sit on the beach and enjoy the waves, that is one simple experience that we are going to have. But everybody can be a Jacques Cousteau. You just got to let your mind go there.
Yeah, that's what's so beautiful about it, is that everybody, this is open to these types of things, are open to anybody who asks and anybody who seeks, you know.
Exactly.
Questions, right?
Look, I'm a firm believer that if you ask the universe a question, it is going to give you an answer. Are you looking for the answer it's going to give you, and is it the answer that you wanted to be given to you? But it always does. And sometimes you see some amazing, beautiful, unexplainable things that allow you to crack your reality wide open.
That's what makes things like doing tarot or casting runes even more fun, because like none of this stuff is by chance, right? So we like to have fun here. So we talk about.
Well, everybody should try out any manner of anything, and if it works for you, use it no matter what anybody else says. At the end of the day, one of the most powerful things in medicine is the placebo factor. It is a non-existent truth that you believe in that brings you power. And, you know, there's probably a little bit of that magic everywhere in the world with every single part of reality. So, yeah, if it works for you, use the hell out of it.
Absolutely. You know, finding things that work for us, modalities, and like little tips and tricks is super helpful. And I think that, you know, Dave is our guest for this episode, is one of those people that is really passionate about helping other people. So it's like, I'm just really excited to share this episode with everybody. I'm going to be reaching out to Dave again later after this is published for maybe some personal work, one-on-one. So yeah, this is I'm really excited to share this episode with you guys. But before we do that, I do have a little bit of some other housekeeping notes to get through. And one of them is that we do have stickers available. I don't know if I have mentioned this on an intro since it happened, but Blake Art did get me some stickers to sell, and I have them up on Ellie's eBay store, and I have links to that store on our Gab page, and I believe they're in Discord. They haven't been posted to the website yet, but maybe we'll throw them in the show notes on this episode if you guys want some stickers. Shipping is a little wonky because eBay's weird, so left a message for more details on that, but it's a sticker. It's not going to be that much anyway, so for whatever that's worth. And the only other little tidbit I can think to mention is the new option for donating through LiberaPay, which is just another option that takes Stripe or PayPal. You can do any amount that you want via LiberaPay, and that organization, that system, that company is all open source, so they get all of their support by supporters of that project. So the people who donate to their page, and since we're all about being open source and value for value, I just wanted to support those guys when we talk about taking donations, when we talk about taking donations and whatnot. And then lastly, but not least, I did want to do another little segment about a stone mineral of the violet ray, and continue that little discussion on the metaphysical properties of some of the gems and things that I have in my own personal collection, which I am putting around our gratitude jar, working, I guess we're going to call it at this point. And just to briefly recap, to get your name in the gratitude jar is a one-time or recurring donation of any amount for any length of time. So it could be $1 once or whatever, right? We'll get your name written in purple ink into a jar with everybody else's names that have donated to the show, and we're going to kind of generate this love frequency and enhance it with these metaphysical properties of the stones around it. So I just wanted to read a little bit about charoite for this episode. And this comes from the Book of Stones, Who They Are and What They Teach, and revised and expanded edition by Robert Simmons and another author whose I still have to look up the pronunciation, so I'm not going to attempt. But Robert writes under charoite, that's spelled Charoite, in case anybody wants to look it up afterwards by themselves. And it's just a couple short little paragraphs here, so it won't be too long. Robert says that charoite is known for its powerful emanation of the purple ray. It can therefore be used to purify and cleanse one's etheric body, releasing disharmonies and dispelling negativity. It can protect one from psychic attack and dispel the tendency to have bad dreams. It facilitates the release of unconscious fears, serving as a catalyst for the healing and transmutation of old patterns of imbalance. It can help one access past life memories and integrate the lessons of past life experience. For those suffering from difficult to diagnose maladies that have their roots in internalized negativity or fear, charoite can be a powerful aid for releasing such things. It can help one merge the heart and crown chakra energies, allowing for deeper spiritual insights in an inner climate of unconditional love. Working with charoite can increase the likelihood of synchronicities in one's life. If one learns to notice these and the messages they imply, one can move through life as if guided by a golden thread, and the pathless path of one's highest potential will be revealed. And that's just a little bit about charoite and what it's kind of all about. And I'm a big fan of synchronicities, so this is one of my more, I guess, more favorite stones, I guess, is, if that's a correct term. Favorites has always been kind of a
favoritist.
Yes, yeah. So yeah, I've got a little chunk. Let's keep it next to the gratitude jar here, and it's purple. It's very pretty. But just like all my other collections of stones are, I don't know, I think they're pretty cool looking. I still need to get pictures of those up. I will do that in the near future, I promise. And other thoughts on synchronicities. We need more of those around here, right? the whole
they do tend to school.
Yeah. It's all and I hope it would be fun to know if anybody else experiences any synchronicities while listening to this podcast, or because of the things that they've thought that we brought up on the show that have caused synchronicities in their life. If you ever want to write in and let us know stuff, maybe we can share it on the air and whatnot. So yeah, don't be afraid to reach out, and we're here and easy to get a hold of. So,
well, I mean, I guess with that, Bill,
Yeah. Let's get into
the episode. Yeah, absolutely. Sorry.
So this is 13 questions with Dave Robinson.
Question number 1. What was the best advice ever given to you? Would you modify it at all today?
I thought about this question a lot. Bill kindly sent the question list out about a month ago, and I had a fair amount of time to do this, and I got to admit, I changed my answer at least twice, quite possibly 3 times. So I'm going to do my very best to keep these to single answers, though I know that's
okay. We're not like Twitter. You can edit and you can have 2 posts next to each other. It's all fine.
I have more than 140 characters. That's beautiful. Thank you for that freedom. The best piece of advice that I think shaped me the most in terms of my character, in terms of how I view the world, came when I was probably 8 or 9 years old. Was in my neighborhood. I was with either a friend or my younger sisters. I can't remember who was with me, but somebody had learned that if you take a magnifying glass and it's a really sunny day in the summer, that you could like burn stuff. And we had gone from sticks to leaves to ants, right? And so we're burning ants on little ant hills in the driveway. And my dad comes home from work, and he's like, "Hey, what are you kids doing?" Right. And we say, "Hey, we're burning ant holes," just like laughing, being kids. Right. And he comes over, and I remember the look on his face. He got just super upset, super quick. Right? And he was like, "Hey, like, don't do that. Don't do that." I was like, "Why? They're just ants." And he said something along the lines of, or I guess before that, I said, "Why? They're just ants. Their lives don't matter." Right. That was my line. His line was something along the lines of, "Well, their lives matter to them, don't you think?" And even at like 7 or 8 or 9, or however old I was, I sat, and it like kind of hit me, and it was one of those like, like, oh, like other people matter other than me too. Like maybe animals matter. And like, I bet it really wants to be alive. And it really started to help direct my love of nature and my love of being outside and animals and plants and things and dirts and trees and all that, and direct it in a very empathetic and compassionate and loving way. And I think that's translated over the course of my life as much as I could, though we all have our own hero's journeys and growing cycles and pains and all that good stuff. I wouldn't alter that. That advice is I think just it stays with me, and it's not like a mosquito's in the house and it bites me on the arm. I'm not going to Johnny Appleseed it and get bit and take it outside. But I do have reverence for living things, and I try to continue to embody that as I get older.
Yeah, it's sometimes it's the little things that we got to pay attention to and that speak to us in the most biggest like terms. It's so cool. It started with just a little ant, and that's kind of like the message you took away from it. And it this extends to like our family pets and stuff too. And of course, it reminds me of a Bible verse of Matthew 25 verse 40. I just looked it up, and it's quickly. It says, "Truly, I tell you, whatever you do for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you do for me." So if we look at the universe as like a holograph, or it's a mirror, and it is holographic, so it reflects back what we put out. And, it really does matter how you treat even the little things, right? Because it's really how you're treating yourself. It's with love, right?
Yeah, I had a conversation actually this weekend. Some high school buddies and of mine went camping in the mountains of Shenandoah. So we had a campfire, and we had some cannabis and some nice conversations, the 3 C's, at this point that happens when we camp. Oh, there's a fourth one. Oh my goodness. So we start talking about our pets and like dogs and cats. And I have a cat. I've always been a cat person over a dog person. It's just been my personality type. I get them. They need their space. It's chill, like totally cool. Dogs vibe well with a lot of people, most people, regardless. Like to come home after the long trip, the dog or the cat comes up to meet you, or you're sitting on the couch and you're like petting and like vibes are good. You're looking down at one another and it's looking up at you or whatever. And like, there's more than just something there, right? Like there is not just a meat suit there that just because it doesn't think or have the same expression or language or abilities that we have doesn't mean that it's not very much alive, and so I love that connection to the pets, Bill, that you brought up with that part of this conversation.
Yeah, it's crazy. You can even extend it to other things in nature, like crystals. The way that they they organize and grow. It's in a certain pattern, and we can find this pattern, in mathematics throughout, other forms of creation. It's ubiquitous. So, yeah, it really goes to speak to how connected everything is, really.
What do you willfully ignore?
I willfully ignore the middle of the grocery aisle, largely. I also willfully ignore big pharma and as many forms of propaganda as I can possibly identify and call out. We've all had a very interesting experience over the past couple of years, I imagine. I have the great benefit of being a history major in college. So I gotta talking about mosquitoes now. Ninjaing them away as we speak.
You're manifesting them.
Yeah, I know. I need to be careful with my words. Abracadabra. I was a history major and a political science minor in school, and I went to a liberal arts college called James Madison University, about 2.5 hours west of Richmond in the mountains. And I learned that love of history from my folks. My dad is a practicing attorney, and he works for the county, and he does like zoning and like signage and stuff that is super necessary but not that exciting. And he always taught me and they always taught me, I guess, and I learned how to read and write and research, because that's what we did. We wrote papers. You read this book, write a paper, tell me what you think. And those were our grades. So I could just connect dots in a way kind of fundamentally, and I've seen over the course of history all the crazy stuff that honestly kind of gets glorified when it comes to like governments and conspiracies and stuff like that. It gets glorified in Hollywood. We've all seen movies about a lot of this stuff, right? And I fell in love with health and wellness in college. Okay. And again, I'd always been active outside, right? But my random roommate freshman year at JMU was like a 4 or 5 time national junior powerlifting champion or something like that. So here am I, this little 155-pound skinny soccer kid, and here's this 220-pound meatball who's told me on day one, I was like, hey man, can I go to the gym with you? I'm like, shit, I'm excited to learn from this guy. And he says, oh yeah, I mean, you can come, but you'll quit. Everybody quits. No one can hang. And it was just like the perfect thing to say to me at that time, whether he knew it or not. And I went away to it. I was like, oh, I'm not
Challenge accepted.
Challenge accepted. Yeah, exactly. I'm not quitting, but ultimately I did. I fell in love with the sport of powerlifting and weightlifting and strongman and ultimately like some Olympic lifting. And through that, I got a job at the library so that I could, as my sophomore year, and I held that job sophomore, junior, and senior year so that I could have access to all the different articles and read all the different PubMed stuff and get this old nutrition journal and read this old Russian kettlebell, workout program or whatever, right? And I got my senior year, I somehow got into a like 300 level nutrition class. And maybe it's like a 200 level nutrition class because there was probably 100 people in it, right? So it wasn't that high up, but it wasn't the 101 either, right? And I had to send this email to get in, and I pleaded. I was like, I'm starving for information. I love this stuff. Like, this is my new thing. And I was falling out of love of history and not going to go on and get my master's in education at this point. And I'm just trying to well, I do love this stuff. I'm not going to change my major. Like, I'm still going to go and get my major. I'm almost done, but what do I do? Right. So I take this nutrition class, and we're like learning about the food pyramid and stuff. And we're learning about how great, margarine is versus butter, and and just the list goes on and on. This can be in a whole nother discussion if we want. I don't know how anybody feels about this stuff on the podcast, but this is a whole rabbit hole with Dave, and if we want it to be. And I would get into these arguments, and they were civil. It's not like I was up on, either one of us were like, oh, you're wrong, right? But I would get into these heated discussions with my professor about hey, the food pyramid doesn't make a lot of sense, at least based off all this stuff that I'm reading over here. And a lot of that would get shut down. Some of it we could actually have a discussion about. Either way, it continued my distrust of people just saying it's right, and not having or looking at other things that could also be right, or maybe could prove that that's actually wrong, or whatever it may be. And so if we fast forward, I ended up becoming a strength and conditioning coach at the University of Richmond for a year right out of college. That led into me falling out of love with the gym, because I was in the gym 15 hours a day, but I learned a ton, became a financial planner, got back into health and wellness after 6 or 7 years, been doing that for the last 5 or 6 years as well. But ultimately, over the past couple, what I've really held true on was the things that I believe and know to be true about health and wellness. And those have really been my foundations over the past couple of years. And thus, I tend to be very skeptical and frankly ignore a lot of things that come out from organizations that have historically proven nefarious and didn't make a whole lot of sense when presented with ulterior evidence otherwise. So I think, God, that is the most diplomatic way I've ever talked about it.
Oh no. Don't hold back. I personally don't subscribe to the whole germ theory thing. We did have Dr. Berlando on the show, and he helped put together a film called Terrain. It's just terrainthefilm.com with Dr. Andy Kaufman and Tom Cohen and a few others, and it just goes into the whole scam and hoax that has been going on for a few years now. But I love that you were studying nutrition in college, and then you're butting heads with the establishment, because I went to a liberal arts school too, right? And that kind of happened to me with archaeology. I was studying philosophy at the time, and wasn't going to change that major, and archaeology wasn't offered anyhow by the time I was getting ready to graduate. But I did go on a few field trips and whatnot, and the experience with I had my professor on this show too, and he's a good, nice guy, but you can tell that there's some hesitation to talk about these type of things in the world of academia, because people will lose their job or whatever. So it's really just a case of cognitive dissonance, I think, at this point.
Well, what really I think, and you can relay this to politics. We can talk about nutrition, right? But I don't know whether you've heard of the carnivore diet or anything like this, right? Which is eating all meat versus veganism, no meat, or even fruitarianism, we're just gonna eat fruits and just raw diet, right? There's all these extremes, and same with politics. It's extreme left, extreme right, for a lot of things. And maybe just because I tend to play the devil's advocate, I tend to see both sides and look at them, and then I'm yeah, maybe somewhere in the middle, right? And maybe it's 70-30, maybe it's 60-40, sometimes it's 50-50. Rarely it's that case. But like over the last couple of years, did a lot of people suffer and a lot of bad things happen, or do people get sick? Like, yes, of course. And, I think there were a lot of things that were done extremely poorly and were also potentially highly orchestrated to prevent people from being healthy, frankly. And, things like going outside and getting sunlight, connection, and love, and drinking good water.
Well, listen, it's not even crazy to say. Just go into a hospital and look at the diet that they're going to give you while you're trying to get better, and look at the environment where, what do we know? Important things: nutrition, sleep, rest. So tons of noise, completely lit environment, low nutrition. And you already see that the fundamentals of the science aren't there. So yeah, it's, but the beautiful thing is, in the world, people are becoming aware and awakening to it. So
agreed. And Adam, to your point, man, like, or to add to your point, so I'll keep this one super brief. I got bit by a spider one time, right? 2015 on the elbow. I took 14 bags of IV fluid to get that down. I was in the hospital for 2 nights. I'm really glad I had Western medicine, but that's when I needed I was out in the ocean and I was drowning and someone needed to toss me a life jacket, right? And I needed the life jacket. I really did. And I'm really happy to have it, right? But when I got back to shore, I went and took swimming lessons, right? And I got really good at swimming. And I started to, oh, I'm definitely going to wear my life jacket out when I go. And I started to be more careful. And there's just, people can actually take swimming lessons in the sense of taking control of their health, as opposed to always asking for life jackets constantly. So, soapbox done. Next question.
I like it.
This is a great style of podcast too, by the way. I listened to your Joel Cochran interview, and the style is awesome. So that's just my 2 cents. I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's all thanks to Darren. This is his baby. All right, question number 3. What book has been most influential on your life, and why?
So this is one where I had to pick 2, and they were really for 2 different decades of my life. I read Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek pretty early on, in maybe like 22 or 23, right when I was transitioning out of the strength and conditioning world and into, because I had no freedom and flexibility of time or income, I then was trying to transition into financial planning, and just the possibility of not doing the 9-to-5 job that I had assumed up to this point that was inevitable, right? That I was somehow skating by, not doing with this gig at the University of Richmond. So that book really just opened up my eyes to other worlds of like efficiency and optimization and personal development. And he recommended another 5 books in there that I then went on to read. Vagabonding by Ralph Potts is one that just comes to mind off the top of my head, that were very influential. Oh man, I could travel and like do this stuff. That's super cool. Just a mind opener and a possibility opener, an expander, if you will. Right. And then the second book along those lines, David Goggins wrote a book called Can't Hurt Me. And that came at the perfect time in my life where I was trying to leave that financial planning career, trying to get the courage to leave a 5.5-year relationship that had started off as the greatest thing ever and turned very not good for me. And I was also trying to run a 50-mile ultramarathon, which I'll get into later on. And he offered a mentality that I really needed at that particular point, because I was hiding from so many things, and I had all these like shields and armors on and like various identities, and where I got the girl in the house and the dog and living downtown, and I got this job, and I'm like doing all this stuff, doing all the things I'm supposed to do, but I'm so miserable and just so unhappy. And I had to, in that time, what I felt I had to do and what I did was break myself down, but do it in a way where I knew that on the other side of that was growth and a different person who knew that he could do hard things, and thus I could do XYZ, right? So I really started to apply a lot of those methods that I learned from David Goggins in and around that time frame. And then when his book came out, it was a really instrumental time and just going for stuff and like saying yes and doing hard things.
David Goggins is a powerful force. He's one of those people that you're like, God damn, look at what he does. Well, look at what he can do, and it just makes you question everything.
Agreed.
What rule do you have for yourself that you never break, and why do you think that it is important?
So this one was an easy one for me to answer because since February 15th of 2016, I have moved in some capacity or bettered myself physically in some capacity every day. So I call it the streak. It's the Keep Your Streak Alive challenge, but it started off as the streak. And I had tried to do this the year prior. So in 2015 on January 1st, I was like, I'm going to work out every day this year. And I got like 70 some days in, and I got drunk on St. Patrick's Day and forgot, and then fell off the wagon. True story. Right. And it was oh damn, like I tried this hard thing, but I failed it. Right. In early 2016, I made the commitment the day before my birthday that I was going to do this again. Right. And I got maybe a month in, and I realized that I was going to fail unless I shifted the course and shifted direction and shifted the definition. So it wasn't going to be, I was going to exercise every day of the 28th year of my life. I was going to instead, this is the definition I've found and have used since, is make a concerted effort to set aside time to better myself physically in some capacity every day. And for a long time that looked like hard workouts or long rucks or lifts or runs or whatever. And since and in between, it has been as simple as, okay, I'm going to go on a walk before bed, or I'm going to do a yoga flow, before bed, or I've got this band here and I'm going to do some like shoulder band stuff on like a really light day, or get in the sauna or get in the ice, or, whatever. Right. But I'm doing something for myself physically every day. And it's been an anchor habit over the past 6 years, some 1,500 days, 1,800 days. I don't know, whatever that math is, but it is always something that I can fall back on. And it's something that has allowed me to remain in the game, so to speak, right? Because physically I've been able to keep up, and I've been able to, I've been injured, and it doesn't always look great, or I'm not always performing the best, or have, looking the best, or whatever it may be, but I'm physically healthy. And I believe that that's the foundation of everything. Right. And so that movement practice has allowed me to learn a whole lot more about myself, and has allowed me to really get a hold of my own physical health. And that has been the catalyst, and often is the catalyst to personal development and to deeper inner work. And so, that I kind of return back to that a lot, but that is the big reason why I then started to do that shadow work and that hero's journey work and that head heart work, is because of the work that I had done physically and was doing physically. So, ultimately you're out on the trail long enough, you start thinking about some shit. So.
No, but that's great, because it's essentially what you're saying is just building in a pattern and doing something repetitively over and over. You're just getting out there and doing it. And then once you're doing it, you're in it. So, that's just that. You want to talk about a philosophy. That's simple.
And it works.
Well, and then once it's the routine and you're not doing it, it's not the normal. So now I got to be doing something.
Yeah. Now I just move every day, and it's really not that hard. Like the days that I'm not moving, I know I at least did something. Like I don't even need to scan or check anymore. Right. Because I know I at least did something in my day, because it's just, that's what I did. Today I know I didn't intentionally, set aside time for a workout per se, but I sat on my floor while I ran 2 meetings. I got a little like mat situation back behind me, and I did a whole bunch of hip stuff, did a bunch of stretching, and I had a little band, and I did some band tears, and it's going to be a light day today. Right. But I stretched for probably 2 hours, and I made the concerted effort not to sit in my chair to do that. I've been trying to sit on the floor more because it's better for my back and my hips. So box checked, move on to tomorrow, and it doesn't have to be these huge things, right? A lot of times guys especially think that in order to better themselves or better their health, they got to go into the gym. And what do you do when you go to the gym? You either get on the treadmill or you do your same bro workout from when you were 16. That's chest and buys and leg press. And there's better ways. There's better ways. So
Yeah, I love it. Health is really is wealth. Like especially as we get older. You mentioned getting older there, and like I just had the pleasure of hanging out with two 90-year-olds over the weekend when I got married. So they're in great shape, and it's because my grandpa by marriage now is just moving around every day, just doing little things, and he's still kicking. It's really cool to see. Plus the mountain air, like being up in the mountains, I think has got something to do with it. The air quality up there, probably
big time.
And but yeah, doing something small. Like I bought a yoga ball not too long ago, and I work from home, so I got a desk job, and I've had a desk job for a number of years now, and introducing a yoga ball in just as a place, in place of a desk chair, like just something that simple is extremely, something small that has a lot of benefits. So,
and ultimately our bodies adapt to things, but it doesn't take much because we're designed to move. And so if we go from a sedentary lifestyle to even just walking more, like let's say you have dogs, like we talked about pets earlier, let's say you've got dogs and you normally take them out in the morning and you take them out, for lunch, and like in between, like you might like send them outside or they come back in, then you do a walk before bed, right? Like add in one more and then maybe put on like a little backpack, or like put on, maybe you're pushing the kid in the stroller as well. It doesn't have to be much, but adding in a little bit more movement, a little bit more resistance, or a little bit more frequency, a little bit more intensity. There's a lot of ways you can start to push that dial in a totally sustainable and chill way to where you wake up the next day and you go, I feel great. Right? As opposed to going to the gym for an hour, smashing yourself and feeling like you got hit by a train for the next 5 days. Right? I've done all of those. I did the second one for a long time. Right? The first one is much more enjoyable and sustainable, in my opinion.
If I were to ask your best friend, what is the one thing they would say you need to work on the most, and why?
Well, it's funny because one of my very best friends, I've been spending a ton of time with him, is my current business partner for my men's health mastery program. And so we talk all the time about it. The answer would be lead generation, right? But if we're not talking about that, then the answer would most likely be that I am notoriously my own worst critic. And not critic per se from like a talking down to myself, like Billy the Bully story, but that I'm hard on myself. I feel in many ways that I can do more, right? We were planning on, or we were going on this trip with my buddies over the weekend. We went camping with 4 high school buddies and like really good friends, guys from the neighborhood. And I had recorded a podcast on Friday. I'm one of the co-hosts of the Get Lifted podcast. So you all had Mark England on. He's a co-founder of Enlifted, and I co-host their podcast. But we had an interview Friday afternoon, and it ran over, and my buddy Chris was picking me up, and I hadn't eaten yet. So I made a smoothie. We still had like a 2-hour drive. We still had to pack the truck. I made my smoothie. We have a little garden in the backyard. And I was like, man, let's just take a minute or two. So I sit down next to the pond. I cross my legs. I'm like, and he goes, hey man, I don't mind if we take our time, but we can't just sit and do nothing right now. Like let's get to the campsite. And I agreed with him, and I was like, oh dude, you're right. I can eat the smoothie in the car. No problem. Like let's start rocking. But it made me realize how infrequently I sit and do nothing. And I think because of that, when I don't have results in certain areas of my life, or things, aren't necessarily going according to plan, though I am very resilient and adaptable, and I can change plans very well. I typically go with change pretty well. I still tend to be very hard on myself. energetically, I can pick up on other people's energies very well. And so I imagine that other people can, in turn, as the universe is a mirror, pick up on my energies very well. And so I know that that can be not as fun, not nearly as fun to be around if I'm like anybody feeling like shit. And I know that I'm in control of that largely. So yeah, don't be so hard on yourself, Dave, when you listen to this back. Cheers.
Yeah, it's true that we can be our own worst critics sometimes without even realizing it. Sometimes, like I just the whole sitting and doing nothing thing, and allowing yourself to chill out and relax, especially when a lot of us are go go go. Some of us are go 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 a lot, and that really creates the space and bringing stillness in. This reminds me of a book by Ryan Holiday, Stillness is the Key. He's a big Stoic author. And it reminds me, we're talking about time here, like bringing things to a standstill and stopping the sway of the pendulums. And this is how we take control back of our spiritual lives anyway, which can lead to other fruits, in other places too. But yeah, I think that's important to emphasize.
Yeah, and being okay with, for me, it's as you said, it's by slowing down that creates the space to then get creative moving forward. And for me, a lot of times that means spending time in the garden where, I'm if you say yes to one thing for an hour, you're saying no to all the other things you could do for that hour. So it's being okay with spending that hour in the garden in the morning, most mornings, and realizing that there's a lot more benefit to that than just, the green beans that we get every 2 weeks or whatever. It's that's the time for me to clear that space and get creative. So making that an emphasis and being cool with that, basically.
And then once you're out there, you kind of get sucked in too. You get sucked into the project, and then you forget about everything. And yeah, I have a garden out front, so I was just thinking about that. Yeah,
presence.
Yeah.
What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
A long hike or a trail or a run that's rewarded with like that smell of alpine air, like crisp alpine air that also happens to be near a body of water, right? It's just a waft that you get, right? Of maybe it's the pine needles, maybe it's the altitude, maybe it's the coolness, maybe it's the runner's high endorphins. That's the best thing in the world to me. And if we can follow that up with, a discussion around a campfire or anything that I can turn on that visionary hat and rift on stuff, if it's a team collectively building something or problem solving, or we're trying to make something better and we're all talking about it and working together on it. Those things are the most stimulating things for me, from a from that standpoint.
Back to that mountain air, dude. There's got to be something good. The lack of oxygen at those higher levels has got to help with our system somehow, our immune system. With I don't know, it doesn't oxidize things. I haven't quite figured out the connection there, but I know there is one. And I went to Contact at the Cabin last spring, which is a host or an event that Darren Grimes hosted with the Gramerica show and Brandon Powell and Dave Matheson. And we were up in Utah, and that's, thousands of miles above sea level. And then I was telling you before we started recording, I just came back from the South Carolina area. So that's mountainous up there, at least where we were in that part by Georgia. So I think that, that's if we can get ourselves in an environment that is better quality air year round, I think that's my goal anyway.
That is my A1 goal as well. My partner Ruslana and I are in the manifestation plus action stage of making our remote living homestead dreams come true. We have done a ton with a third of an acre in a neighborhood outside of Richmond, Virginia, and we are just we love it. We want less power lines and train stations 4 blocks away, and more, quiet air and mountain views. It's the best. So I agree. Props to your granddad or whoever was hanging out in the mountain air. There was still getting after it at 90.
Right? Yeah, that seems to be like a trend to recently of people wanting to get out of the cities, at least in the circles that I've been talking to anyway. And I think it's a good thing, people wanting to be more self-sufficient and less relying on these systems that maybe we alluded to in the previous question. But
Yeah, the pendulum is always swinging. That includes on, how society lives in nature and against. And, we're kind of bumping up against, all the ills of going against nature. So, yeah, there's a certain amount of people that going beyond crafting and going back into nature.
Yeah, and there's a community that can get built with that. You had mentioned, hey, in my community, it's what I'm seeing. And, think about just from the standpoint of your urban garden, right? Or your backyard or front yard garden, right? Like I've got a buddy that lives about 1.5 miles from me named Nick. He's been there like 7 or 8 years. When he first got there, he planted a fig tree, and now his figs are just popping, just blowing up. Every time the figs bloom or fig tree, sprouts off, he's got like 100 pounds of figs. And he didn't tell me about this until, or at least I didn't know about this. And it's not like, oh, he didn't tell me, like that son of a gun. Like it's just, like it's his duty to tell me about his fig, blowout.
I thought we were friends.
Exactly. I was like, come on, man. I like smoothies. But so this year, I mentioned earlier my green beans. Like I don't love green beans, but that's Nick's jam, and so it happened to take really well in my particular garden, whatever I got going in my beds. So I planted a bunch of extra, and we've got this exchange going, and it's awesome. Both of us are thrilled. I also grow stuff that I eat in my own kitchen, in my own garden, but just the opportunity to have these conversations. We wouldn't have been talking about this if we weren't talking, or if the conversation of community and homesteading and, getting out and putting stuff in the ground and things like that wasn't going on. So it was just an opportunity for us to give back more and to collaborate more and to connect more. And we've become better friends because of that, and like, how cool is that? So.
yeah, one of the other places that you kind of run into these types of people would be like the farmers market. That's just another tip for listeners. Or what I recently found is if your local area has a rock and gem or a rock and mineral club, a lot of those people seem to be into alternative subjects. So
climbing as well. Climbing gyms. You said rock gyms, like a rock and mineral gym for sure, but a climbing gym will get you some people who have a lot of reverence for outdoors as well.
Makes sense. Not rock climbing, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What was the most embarrassing or humbling experience of your life?
So this was cool because it was not, sort of one and the same, sort of depends, but I got back into health and wellness coaching in 2018, and I started a business where I was basically doing group workouts in Richmond, and then had built an app, or had kind of white labeled an app that did workout programming and nutrition guidelines and sleep stuff. And I was texting people to remind them to drink water and building all this stuff out with a business partner at the time, and priced it wrong. We rushed to market. I was burning the candle at both ends. I made a lot of mistakes. I was still using fitness as therapy for myself, and so that I attracted a lot of people who ultimately were subconsciously using fitness as therapy for themselves as well. I didn't have professional boundaries in a lot of capacities when it came to my own work-life balance and otherwise. And so I ended up finding myself 2.5, 3 years later, moving to San Diego to move in with a couple other coaches in my community. I plan on being in Imperial Beach, San Diego, just north of Tijuana. right? And was going to be there for 6 months, living 3 blocks from the beach with this group of coaches in a bunk bed with another bunk bed on the other side of the room, loving life. As it turns out, my old business partner gave me a call about 5 weeks in and said, "Hey, dude, so I've been poking around Mexico since beginning of October. It's now middle of February, and I think I found the greatest spot ever." And so, like, what do you say? You say, like, "All right, go on. Tell me more." Right? And he goes on to say that he had basically been living for a month and a half with his family in this little town, just maybe 20, 30 miles north of the Belize border on the Yucatan Peninsula, 6 hours south of Cancun. There's a beautiful blue lagoon there, like the darkest, brightest, most diverse blue lagoon. In Spanish, the name actually means blue of 7 colors or something along those lines, right? So it's just this beautiful space. It's in this Mayan jungle. And there's some real opportunities here because this place is about to blow up, in our opinion, or in his opinion, Tulum/Playa del Carmen style. And so I'm like, well, shit, I'm going to come down and check it out, right? And he basically was like, dude, you've got to come down here so that I can see whether I'm going crazy or if this is legit, right? So I go, I land down here, and my first impression was, I might have fucked up. Excuse my French, but that was my first impression. Because as I'm pulling into this thing, there's, this was a town where if you're driving on the Federalis Highway, like 99 times out of 100, you don't turn left into this town. You just don't, and just by the looks, burning trash in the street, stray dogs running around. If you're eating chicken that night, pollo that night, like it's one of these chickens that's running around that somebody's going to eat and kill and then toss in the oven. But he had just basically endeared himself to this particular community. And we stayed at this woman's house, and turns out that the guy there Antonio had been there for as long as he had been alive, except for an 8-year stint. He was working construction in Chicago back like 10 years ago, and he came back. So we ended up seeing 72 properties in like 8 days. We went on this jungle Mayan bike tour. We ate coconuts out of just off of the trees. I was eating these little pepita bananas that were growing in Antonio and Nora's place. That were, swear to God, the best bananas you will ever see or hear of in your entire life. Like just mini bananas that I imagine are probably what real bananas are like before we GMO'd them. But it's these tiny little bananas, yay big, an inch, 2 inches big, and having the time of my life. So I came back to San Diego. I made the prompt decision. I'm going to move to Mexico, and we're going to open a health and wellness retreat. So I go back to Richmond, say my hasty goodbyes, get a one-way to Mexico, convince a couple other buddies to get a one-way as well. They were coming down a month or two later, right? I moved to Mexico on March 2nd, 2020. We put a down payment on a hotel in this little town. There was a compound that had 5 rooms, apartments, plus a cabana, open kitchen area, covered like cement floor area that you could probably put like 30 yoga mats on. Man, we had 2 coconut trees, a mango tree, a couple banana trees inside the compound, 14-foot walls, 2 big murals on the front, like starting to call people, come on down for this thing. I had asked about joining the soccer team, and they wouldn't allow gringos on the soccer team. And so I was out there playing with the kids instead, and I was drawing some attention with my footy skills. They knew I had talent, and I got to hop in on a scrimmage, which was a ball. And I was in the community, man. We were doing it. We were in. I was learning Spanish. We were about to buy a motorbike, and then Trump closed the borders on like March 14th or whatever, 2020. And we had a real puckered moment, multiple puckered moments, a week worth of puckered moments, and ultimately decided that we weren't far enough along on our project to be able to safely and comfortably stay where we were, because we didn't know what was going to go down. That was the very early stage when it was super scary and sketch, and like No one really knew what was really happening. At least I didn't. We didn't. So I moved back, and I spent a month sleeping in my business partner's walk-in closet. No shit. Big enough for a twin mattress, or it's a single mattress rather. Is the twin bigger or smaller? Twin would be 2, so bigger. So yeah, single. Yep, single. So I had a single mattress in there. I don't even think they'd made single mattresses. It was like an air mattress type thing. Wiping down doorknobs and stuff, and spraying Clorox on vegetables in the early stages, right? And then stuff just again started not making sense. But as it turned out, my business partner owned another business, and it was a dorm room furniture business. And the schools at this time, it was a total cluster, and no one knew what the hell was going on. And I didn't have anything else to do. My dreams had crumbled in my hands. There was still this opportunity, still an option. We had until like April 30th to put the second down payment down. So we were like buying ourselves time, right? For this hotel, we could go back. Borders aren't open yet. But I found myself the rest of that spring and the rest of that summer, when the borders did open, it was in a different space because I had spent the whole summer cleaning refrigerators in a steel warehouse, steel basically container, and moving many refrigerators and putting them in shipping containers in and out of dorm rooms and onto U-Hauls. I'd spent the summer scrubbing mold and like blown up microwavable popcorn out of microwaves, and just totally and completely humbled, y'all. Like humblepie.com, and had the woe is me, had the why is me, had the victim mentality. And Mark England, who was a dear friend of mine at that point and a mentor of mine at that point, and then offered me the lifeline of a lifetime and said, dude, and it's kind of funny how he did it too, because he was the first person I had physical contact with outside of my business partner. And during COVID, we went to exchange some things with one another, some supplies with one another, and we just unknowingly did the whole like, all right, man, good to see you. Oh shit, and like, oh, sorry, 6 feet, and then like, this is dumb, and so I started like boxing him and doing like sparring with him and hanging out at the farm once a week or whatever. But he got me into level 1. I've been lifting, man, and within 8 weeks, I had changed my own story. I had dealt with, had processed a lot of that emotion that I was holding on to and was sure as hell going to hang on to for a long time. Otherwise, when it came to the loss of that particular opportunity and stage in my life, and allowed me the opportunity to step into a role of a coach, which is what I'm doing now, utilizing that method. So, a lot of things shifted very quickly with that, but that was by far the most humbling spot of my life. And to me, embarrassing to be, talking about and showing pictures of the lagoon and, hey, we're down here at the tiki bar and it's going to be amazing. And 2 months later, I'm sweating my ass off, cleaning out moldy refrigerators, trying not to throw up, covered in Clorox, and it was such this like dichotomy, man. But I needed it. Right. And the universe did a really incredible thing for me in that moment, because it opened my eyes to my current relationship. And I'm with my partner, Ruslana, and I wouldn't be with her otherwise. Been together 2 years pretty much ever since. And it is going to be the one forever. Right. And my career. So I'm really happy that happened. It just happened to be a very embarrassing and humbling experience throughout.
That's an amazing story of how, I guess, you found the Enlifted community. Like you mentioned level 1, like for people that don't know too much about the Enlifted coaching and what that entails. We did do on the show, we did go through the vocabulary course, but that's been, as I understand it, phased out. So like when you get into the Enlifted program, like you have these different levels, like 1, 2, and 3, like what does all that mean?
Totally. So I'll even back up a little bit further, because Mark has been in the language game for almost 15, 20 years. He's an expert. He's traveled the world learning from experts. This is the guy, right? And I met him in 2017 at a networking event, and he, unbeknownst to me, as we became friends, helped me through a couple of those big transitions we had talked about earlier. Hey man, hop on a call with me. Let's get on a Google Doc, write some stuff down, and let me ask you a couple questions and see how you feel. And clarity, but I didn't really think about it at the time, and I don't think it was the Enlifted method at the time. In fact, I know it wasn't at the time. I went to a seminar in 2018 with him and Mike Bledsoe and Brandon Powell. That was a resilience seminar. Got to know Mark and all those guys even further, and then helped launch the Enlifted Way of the Enlifted Athlete brand at Paleo FX in 2019. So I had known about Enlifted. I knew kind of what was going on, but I didn't know at the time, because I was in San Diego and then Mexico, what he had done and how it had evolved into what it is today. And so level 1 then and now is a deep dive and a cleanup of a coach's or an individual's own personal story, while demonstrating and teaching, and through teaching the Enlifted method, which is a 4-step process to unlock freedom and confidence. Right? It is, and I can talk about the method and the 4-step as well, because it's very simple and easy and applicable for a lot of people. And it's open source. Take it and run with it. Right? So level 1 is, again, cleaning up our own stories. For me and for most people, we all have those things that we know are in our way, or if we don't know that are in our way, they're at least those things that have happened to us that we could categorize as hurt or haunting, or an area that we're super stuck, right? We all can name 1, 2, 5, 10 of those if we really sat down and thought about it. And when I cleared out my big ones, I was able to have a ton of space and clarity to move forward personally, professionally, and otherwise. And my big ones, frankly, and for comparison, weren't that big. But what I saw was how, I shouldn't say they weren't that big. Trauma is a trauma. There's no judging it, right? And, my peers were talking about the ride from hell, which was a kidnapping, that a woman experienced and was able to process and get through a lot of those old feelings and emotions from. One guy was a 50 cal gunner in Iraq and Afghanistan, and saw some shit and was able to move a lot of those emotions and to free himself from a lot of those stuck feelings and haunting and hurtful memories, right? And it was just one after another. And I made a commitment to myself to do 1,000 of these sessions, 1,000 of these storywork sessions. I'm in the 650s, 660s, somewhere like that at this particular point in time, 2 years in. But for the past 2 years, this has been my professional career. And I went on to take level 2, which is more about celebrating the wins. And once we clear that space, we can use that space to be creative moving forward. So this is where a lot of vision casting comes in, celebrating the good shit, the stuff that is worth celebrating, building for the future. This is where presentation skills come in and is taught. This is where we really kind of get into the meat and the potatoes of forward-looking story work, right? And then level 3 is a longer program. It's a 6-month program. And that is based on turning this into a career. And it's the mastery of the art and the skill of the storywork process. So very briefly, the storywork process, if a story can be written down, it can be worked. We can do this process. And what do I mean by story? I mean about your physical description of what actually happened. Right. And like, none of us were there. What happened? Top of the steps when you were 12, right? Write it out just like you were telling the story. And if that happens to be titled Top of the Steps, and I can write out, when I was 12, I was at the top of the steps and, I slipped and like whatever this traumatic thing is, right? We write it down. We read it out loud. We then slow down the rate of speech. We'll read it out loud again, but we slow it down. So now instead of flying through the read, we're now able to process and see various parts of the story that maybe we didn't see before. Not only that, but we start to realize that we're not in the story anymore. We've separated ourselves from the story. So before, when everything was bouncing around in our heads and, we couldn't really see anything very clearly, and we were very much the main character and the the main thing in the story. Now that story is away from us. It's separate from us. It's on the computer screen. It's on paper. And if we can interject some quality, deep, downshifting, diaphragmatic breaths into the equation, typically on punctuation points. So find your periods and find your commas. Find your question marks and your exclamation points. If you can add a breath at those spots, it downshifts the individual to the point where they can then process and experience that very hurtful thing, but do so in a parasympathetic nervous system state for the first time. So as opposed to being fight or flight every time that thing comes up since then, just about, most likely, right? You think about it, oh, nope, not doing that. It comes up, nope, fight or flight, right? Now we're, and in this state, we can heal, we can process emotions, we can store memories, we can clear out the file cabinet, right? We can really start to heal and move on from these things that we've experienced. So I've personally found it to be the most effective thing I've ever come across, personally or professionally. It's been the through line for me from a health and wellness standpoint. Because before, I could teach all the healthy habits I want. I can demonstrate all the healthy habits I want. I can lead by example. I can talk about it. I can put out content. I can do all this stuff. But if the identity of that individual is still someone who is stuck or has limiting beliefs, or there's still a bully story there, or they're still shit talking themselves, or whatever it is, then that stuff isn't nearly as effective as it could be otherwise. So combine them, and now you're rocket shipping.
So the term parasympathetic is always something that I've had to take a second look at and look up, because I heard it in my chiropractor's office a few times and was unfamiliar with it then. But correct me if I'm wrong, it basically means being able to resonate with, right, as opposed to fight or flight, which is not resonating, right? Is that correct?
Correct. And I'm not sure what the etymology is, but I know that the sympathetic nervous system state is, both are part of your autonomic nervous system, right? Your body is regulated by one of these aspects. The autonomic nervous system is responsible for digestion, which you don't have to think about and you don't have control over. Blinking is an example where most of the time you're just blinking, but I can take it over and blink right now, right? Or I can stop myself from blinking, but it's controlled by the autonomic nervous system. So we are always either in or oscillating between a state of sympathetic or upregulated or stimulated or fight, flight, or freeze state, or we are in the opposite of that. We're again getting in between, somewhere in between of the two, which is a parasympathetic, rest and relax, feed and breathe, down-regulated, chilled out state. We get there almost exclusively through our breath and through our words, right? So if I do this, right, like I'm running or I'm maybe the beginnings of a panic attack, or I'm doing Wim Hof breathing, a very upregulated style breathing, I will get a sympathetic nervous system response. I'll get a response scared you, right? My heart rate will rise. My pupils will dilate. My blood will kind of rush into the organs, and we're going to start getting ready for combat. And it's I'm ready to rock, right? I'm upregulated, right? Versus right, we do that for a minute. We breathe in through our nose, which is exclusively used for breathing and smelling, right? And we almost always, many humans tend to mouth breathe and bypass all the beautiful stuff that nature or God or whomever created up there to help filter air and humidify it and make it better absorbed and clean out pathogens and all this other stuff. But we take a big breath in through our nose, we exhale out through our mouths, we blow that air out longer than our inhales, and it helps to bring that balance of carbon dioxide and oxygen to that spot where our body's right, to that calm, chill space. If you're ever exercising and you feel out of breath, it's not necessarily often that you need more oxygen, it's that you need to offload carbon dioxide. So you need to get that balance back, right? And so by we breathe in oxygen, we exhale carbon dioxide, we're offloading that stressor hormone. And so we're able to downshift into this state. And again, in this state, this is where our cells repair. This is where memories are stored. This is how we heal. And we're able to access compassion in this state. We're able to access gratitude or forgiveness, or places that where before might have been anger or guilt or shame or overwhelming sadness. Now there's a different feeling to it because we're in a different place physiologically. And our words get us there just as much as our breath too.
Oh, that's awesome. The making the point about inhaling through your nose. Like I read this book, Science of Breath, by Yogi Ramachakara, I think, and he's got this whole chapter of just ranting about how people don't breathe through their nose, or people breathe through their mouth too much. It's kind of, I didn't know it was such a big thing, like how important that aspect of it was.
It's our bodies are always trying to find signals, right? And we're always giving our bodies signals. Light, for example, is another huge thing that most people don't realize is such a huge signaler to our bodies and to our entire system, right? Our bodies are governed by what's called the circadian rhythm. The circadian rhythm is the natural wake-sleep cycle of all living animals, like gnats, bats, rats, donkeys, humans. We all have a circadian rhythm, and it's governed by light, right? And so, think about evolutionarily, humans on the come up for 1 million years or 100,000 years or however long, right? The only lights we've had are the sun, candles, fire, and really bright moon / stars, which granted were a lot brighter back in the day before light pollution. That light, that red, orange light at night and in the morning, signaled to your bodies different things than the white, bright, high noon light, right? That's why that looking at the phones or computers or whatever it may be late at night or first thing in the morning can be very shocking to the body. And it's actually one of the big factors when it comes to sleep disruption is light pollution. So a lot of these things are just inputs to our bodies, sensory inputs to our bodies that dictate and govern a lot of our physiological processes. Breath is one of those, just like light is, just like, the food that gets dropped into our bodies, through our mouths, right? Just like whatever we're absorbing through our skin, all of these are signals or can be signals. And so the breath is one of those, but again, to talk about the words for a second, like if I say, I hate myself, I hate myself, I hate myself, I hate myself. If I repeat that for the next minute, like I got, that was not a fake sigh. Like I got a real like in my chest right then, just by saying that 5 times. That's a sympathetic nervous system response state. That's a stress response state versus I love myself, I love myself, I love myself, I love myself. I do that for another minute, that's going to be a totally different place. So you can start to see how vastly influential our words and our breath are. And especially when you think you breathe 25,000 times a day and have, 25,000 thoughts a day, and whoa, like start to take some control and look at some patterns and put some emphasis on it.
Yeah, the slowing down your breath, like the making your exhale longer than your inhale, also reminds me of making that heart-brain connection, which you touched on in your own words. But then the how we talk to ourselves, like if there's photographs like people have done where you talk to like a drop of water, like you tell it you hate it, and then you freeze it and then photograph it, it looks all fucked up or whatever, and then you tell a drop of water that you love it and it looks like a snowflake or whatever, right? So, and our bodies are all water too, so like just extrapolating from that. And I love that you brought up like the I am statements, and about abracadabra, right? Like through, and so like these affirmations, like I am, insert desired outcome here, right? And yes, those are very like, that's something I've become aware of more, and how the power behind it. That's something that Saint Germain talks about in Saint Germain talks about it in the Magic Presence. It's book number 2 out of Saint Germain Press. I've been going through those on Dr. Bear Lando's recommendation, and it's cool to see how all these different little bits and pieces of the puzzle is starting to fit together.
Well, the best affirmations, in my opinion, come from prior limiting beliefs. So I can give you a list of 100 affirmations, but the ones that's the most impactful for you are they're going to come from something that you used to not think about yourself. So for me, I love myself as my anchor affirmation, right? Just like I've got an anchor habit to move my body. If I find myself in a negative feedback loop, if I have like a song stuck in my head that I don't want stuck in my head anymore, if I just want to take a time and be present and be mindful, I'll go back to I love myself. I love myself. I love myself. And that affirmation not only changed my life, but quite possibly saved it. I was in a spot where I hated myself and I didn't know whether I wanted to hate myself much longer, and that's a totally different conversation. But that is flipping those words started to change everything for me, and very quickly, because I started to look at the world in a different place. My reticular activating system got turned on to love. Right. And I opened myself back up to that, where before I had closed off for a lot of reasons. And so that affirmation means so much to me for so many reasons. And so that's why it's so powerful. Right. Maybe it's I'm beautiful. I'm beautiful. I'm beautiful. I'm beautiful. Because maybe somebody grew up their whole life thinking the opposite. And so how powerful can that be when you start to, you say that more, now the shoulders come up, and you know what, I am going to put those heels on because I am beautiful, and it starts to go off into whatever capacity it may be. Maybe it's I'm handsome, maybe it's I got this, maybe it's I'm strong, because you can think about a lot of times when you weren't, but then you did that thing and it was hard and you got through it, and that means you're strong. And so I'm strong now. I'm strong. I'm strong. I'm strong. I'm strong. And you can start to build an identity behind someone who's strong. Damn, I just got goosebumps. It can change and save lives, and it's within all of our power to do it for ourselves, which is so cool.
Yeah, it seems like it helps to have like a coach or somebody along the way, because sometimes like I get what you're saying, and like I'm resonating with it so much, and just the emphasis of finding, like you said, the most powerful affirmations are the ones that we come up with ourselves. So like the ones that we create, like we have to find and dig out in our own, doing our own shadow work, but it helps to have like a guide along the way.
100%.
Yeah, I think that makes me, I want to, it makes me excited to learn more about this too. So
oh yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
What is your greatest fear? How did you overcome it?
I fight with this one a lot. My greatest fear is regret. It's like getting to life at 80 and, my grandfather, who is one of my heroes or role models, which we'll get to, but, he's 86 and he fell 3 days ago in the Kroger parking lot, and he didn't break anything, but he's just more and more and more slowing down. And he lives such an incredible life. And I think my biggest fear, my biggest fear is regret, getting to old age and being physically unable to do things. And so that's why health matters so much to me now. I want to push that timetable out as long as I can. And 2, not living a life of significance and fulfillment to me. And for myself, freedom and flexibility matter a lot. Impact matters a ton to me. I have a really difficult time spending time doing things I don't love to do, whether that's part of my ADHD gift or whether that's part of my double Aquarius moon and sun. If you know anything about that, I don't know. Maybe it's just because I'm me, but that freedom, that flexibility, that love for things, that's very important to me. And I fear a life of me not chasing those things. And so I live into that, or try to fight that, or try to work with that by doing my best to really live life in capital letters, and to lead as best as I can, and to make the impact that I can, and to love what I do. And I realized I just couldn't be a refrigerator guy. That just wasn't like, I made decent money, like all things considered, in that warehouse. Like it's not like I was doing it for free, but I needed to do more. And I know that
It was a pretty cheap lesson.
it was a cheap lesson, all things considered. But, it allowed me the opportunity to again see, like, are you familiar with the hedgehog concept? Either of y'all, have y'all heard the hedgehog concept?
I am not.
Good to Great, guy that wrote this. And I get Jim Collins and James Clear mixed up. So Jim Collins wrote Good to Great. Awesome. I've said James Clear on like 4 different podcasts, and then like, wait, is that right? No. So Jim Collins wrote Good to Great, and it's an examination from a business sense of like why Apple became Apple and the other companies that were really close didn't, right? But he has this concept called the hedgehog, and I've taken that concept and applied it to my life. And this is the hedgehog. Okay. Think about a Venn diagram where it intersects in the middle is the hedgehog. So it has to have all 3 of these parts. Okay. In order for this thing, this professional thing, this job, this career, this business to be a hedgehog, right? You have to love what you do, not like it, not just be good at it, not just doing it because you're doing it. You got to love it. It's got to drive your economic engine, meaning you got to make whatever money you need to make or want to make from it, right? And it has to be something that you were either born for, created for, or could be the best in the world at, right? And when I think back to all the things that I've done, I majored in history so I could be a high school history teacher, right? Like, it would have been like, I wasn't going to be the best teacher. It's why I never felt great about personal training. I know personally a lot better coaches. Like, I know a ton about movement and health and wellness, and I've coached players that went on to play in the NFL, and I can coach general population, but there's just better coaches out there in that space who they love it more than I love it. Financial planning, like I taught people how to build their own financial plans, and like that was cool, but I didn't love it, whereas I love this. Like, I love the story work piece. I love using this method and interjecting it with that health and wellness conversation and sitting across from one another and helping them work their stories and clear that space and then go build and do and be the person that they know they can be, and supporting them with the healthy habit stuff along the way. Like that's what I love. It's what I feel like I was born and created for. Maybe because I grew up with 2 little sisters, maybe because my dad told me not to burn ants when I was 8, and now I love all the stuff. I can sense energies really well. I curse on my coaching calls. I can like connect with people very well, and I shoot them straight, and they know that it's never going to go anywhere. And I hold the space for people to get into stuff, and I don't believe I'm the best in the world at it, but I know I could be. And I know that I'm going to keep doing this for like the next 40 years, and reps and consistency and time mean that it's going to be a win regardless. So if I didn't do something that felt like a hedgehog to me, whatever that thing is, I feel like I would be wasting my life, because I know that possibility is out there.
Yeah, that sounds like maybe you're getting me excited. I had something to add or to go off of, and I lost it.
Happens to me all the time.
Yeah.
Half the time I drop back in and I'm like, wait a minute, is this where I wanted to drop in? Story work process, hedgehog.
Yeah, the hedgehog. It just it's just appealing to me even more. Oh yeah, here it is. You mentioned your some of your astrological signs. Is that something that you incorporate when you work with clients?
So my partner Ruslana does.
Okay.
She does she's actually trained. She's a triple major. She's got a biochem degree. We trained in pharma, but also has left that during and around this time frame, and because a lot of the stuff didn't line up, and has done Ayurvedic training and as tarot reading, and does a lot of channeling and things of that nature. Very energetic, spiritual. She's done my reading a ton of times, and I've also done things like human design and seen a couple other things that have just really, if anything, given me more permission to be me, if that makes any sense. or at least kind of justified some of my what I thought was oddball behaviors or things that just felt so innate to me that seemed different or weird or not innate to other people. Just like some people are analytical, and that blows my mind. Like some people look at math and know what the hell that is, and that is like to me, but my mind does other stuff. So that double Aquarius, like I lean hard into that, man. Like but that's always been me. I've always been rebellious. I've always not like status quo. I've always needed freedom and independence and time, but I've always loved being outside. And I mean, it's just a lot of that made sense.
Yeah. I was going to ask if you had explored human design at all too, because I've done that like a little bit. I've done more of the astrology work and stuff like that, and with tarot and things. But yeah, that's super cool that you are able to incorporate that, because those systems of information, I think, are not given as much credit as they are or could be.
Could be, yeah, and I try to meet people where they are. Like if they're open to it, then awesome. Let's use some of this as a data point for where you're at, maybe where a partner's at, maybe what's going on in the world, right? If it's not something that somebody identifies with, then there's no sense in talking about being a Capricorn. It doesn't mean anything, and so let's get into stuff that does. But for those who are a little woo, I do like to incorporate and drop it in.
I love that you mentioned Aquarius too, because that's the
age.
Yeah, and that's Aquarius is the water bearer, right? Correct, and that's a man. That's a man carrying a jug of water.
It can be. I think it can also be both, but I'm not sure. But it's this is the age of Aquarius, the age of enlightenment, the age of a new beginnings, the age of uplifting and of coming to, and I don't know, that's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely, it is. I think it reminds me of that one song. I don't know, I'm not going to sing it, but the coming or in the age, Aquarius. I don't know. There's got to, yeah, they're telling us something. I think
they are.
Anyway.
Question number 9. What is your single greatest driving force in life, and how do you further it?
So I'm going to tell a story of how this is the first and I think only time I've ever gotten like a channeling or like a out of body type experience or something like that, right? So I'm driving down. This is like August of 2020. I'm in a U-Haul outside of Baltimore. I'm probably going like 80 miles an hour on 95 North with 400 refrigerators in the back of this 30-foot U-Haul. Like a bomb driving down the highway pretty much with all these refrigerators in this thing. But I'm listening to Joe Rogan, and he's got somebody on. He's got Colonel David Faber on talking with Jeremy Corbyn about some UFO stuff, right? And I had an experience in the past that I may or may not tell later on that at least piqued my interest enough to listen to this particular Joe Rogan episode. Right, so everything happens for a reason. Very firm believer in that. Somebody was talking about something, and somebody said something along the lines of like, well, just because they're UFOs doesn't mean they're from outer space. And I just got zinged with like, psst, and something said, oh, you figured it out. And I was like, what? Right. And to the point where it was so weird, y'all, to the point where like, all of my hair on my arm stood up, like hair on my neck stood up. I looked in my passenger seat and I was like 50-50. There's going to be something in my fucking passenger seat. And I know for a fact I'm solo dolo on this trip, right? Like there's no one here and something is going on, right? So it like buzzes in. He's like, you figured it out. I'm like, figured what out? And I couldn't get an answer back. So I was like, what are you? What is this? What's going on? And I'm like, still like hurtling down 95, just like having this experience, right? I turn off the podcast and I don't really get like an answer back. And I'm thinking about like 1,000 different things. Like, is this like my dead grandma? Did I like drive through some like field of, ghosts? Did, is this the aliens? Like, did I tap into some, like, I have no, is this me from the future? Am I in some like interstellar thing? Like I don't know what's going on, but I know it's weird. Right. And I couldn't figure out what it is. So I asked, well, what am I? And I got buzzed in. Again, I'm not thinking this. This is not like a Dave thought. This is like an instantaneous answer. The answer was conduit. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, all right, I think I know what a conduit is. Right? But again, I'm not a math science guy. I'm a history political science guy. So I Googled conduit as I'm driving down the highway. And the first thing that came up was a vessel for carrying water. There's your water bearer, right? Then I scroll one more and it says conductor of electricity or electrical current. And I thought, oh, that's weird. Energy. What kind of energy? And then it goes, bzz, this is my zap-in download. Love. So the answer I got when I asked this thing, what am I? It gave me back a conduit of love. And I cried, started crying, driving down the highway. And, I said, thank you. I was like so gracious and thankful, right? I was like, oh my God, thank you. And it started to like die down. And I was like, wait, are you still here? Is it still here? And it was like, bzz, and I was like, Jesus Christ, like it's still here. Like I looked to the side again. I'm like, all right, like whatever is like, and I'm like poking the side and like, it's like, God, like, all right, whatever, like whatever's here is here. I say, thank you. And I say, how do I do this? How do I be a conduit of love? And it said, just be more you, like be you. And that was at a real, like beautiful time in my life to be able to say that and do that and have that experience. And I not kidding. I like looked to the side and I just pounded the air in the passenger seat to like whatever. I just gave like a little fist bump to the air to my right and like kept driving down the road. But, that answer, the greatest driving force in my life, how do I further it? Like I want to be a conduit of love. And, whether that's through my coaching, whether that's through my relationship with my partner, whether that's through, being the best uncle I can be. I spent the whole day with my 9-month-old nephew, and like as that kid gets older and it's my first nephew, I'm so stoked to just love this kid hard, so it's the best answer I could think of.
Oh, that's a great answer. Isn't it interesting that let me reset. Whenever we have like these experiences, like something that that we have trouble explaining, and then we second guess if it was real in the moment or like right after it happened, and then there's like that reconfirmation, like you said, you got that second shock or whatever. Like that, it seems to be a motif in a lot of these types of stories. I know that Graham Dunlop had a UFO experience in the 90s that he talks about, and he asked for the object to come back in the sky after it had left, and it did. And I had a similar experience on near my 33rd birthday, which wasn't too long ago, about seeing this white orb above me while I was coming back from a dream, and I asked it to return, and it did, and had that whole experience. And it just seems like there is the whatever guiding force is out there is benevolent.
Yes, sure.
Benevolent. And I love how the key message is always just to be you more. Like, it's just so simple and so beautiful, and it just takes away like all the worry and anxiety and depression that we wrap ourselves up in on a daily basis. Sometimes, right? So I think, yeah, that's an awesome answer.
Just means we also have the answer, and the answer is within us, and to be okay. Like if you like who you are, you win, says my good friend and mentor Adam Chen, right? So if you like who you are, you win. I'd go so far as to say if you love who you are, you're living that fulfilled life, and yeah.
Who were or are your role models and why?
Also, I love this question. I think it's so important to have expanders in your life, which are different than role models, in my opinion. Expanders are people who you may not know, may never meet, but who you can see enough of you in them, or enough of like, oh, well, if they did it, I can do it. that it gives you that like permission and influence and motivation and whatever. So like David Goggins for me, I might not ever meet him. Definitely an expander. Mark was an expander for me, Mark England, and a tremendous role model and mentor and a great friend. A role model needs to, in my opinion, model, right? And my grandfather was the most tremendous role model that I've ever experienced in my life. Self-proclaimed West Virginia hillbilly who raised a whole bunch of hell. That came out on Christmas, this past Christmas. Man, I'm just a West Virginia hillbilly who raised a whole lot of hell. So that's a verbatim quote that I'm thrilled that we got out of him. Nature lover, biologist, park ranger at Rocky Mountain National Park, officer in the Navy, flew in the Navy, was on the USS Enterprise. Just a tremendous man. Traveled the world, traveled the U.S. with his wife, my grandmother, raised my dad and uncle, and always showed us a great example of what love is, but also what discipline is and what hard work is, and just the raddest dude, man. Like, tells the greatest stories, just the coolest stuff. It's actually stories that he used to tell that got me into the UFO stuff to begin with. They were on the USS Enterprise, and he worked on he worked in the control room and ran radar, right? And so he'd often go up in radar planes. They'd go, he's either like up in the radar planes or like in the bridge, right? In the communication stack, right? And they had a couple lights off the side of the carrier group and showed up on the radar, like tracking the group. Can't really see what's going on. Don't really know what this is. Cool. Let's scramble some jets to go out and see it. Right. And so they scramble jets off the carrier, and the jets go around. And, the crazy part about this was that my grandfather was the first one in the air because he's in the radar plane. Right. So the radar plane goes up, posts up, starts to do the little loop, seeing the radar. The jets go up, right? They take off and they start to loop back around and go after this thing. And my grandfather is looking at this radar that, maybe takes like, and I'm not well versed in this, so please don't come down on me if you guys know anything about this, or listeners are actually in the military. But let's say it takes like 10 clicks for something to get off the radar screen, right? Like, and that's like beep, 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 and if a jet took off at 500 miles an hour and flew straight, it would take 10 beeps to get off the screen, right? This thing went from like 200 feet off the surface of the ocean to over 100,000 feet in the air in like a second and a half. It's like a click, like beep, gone. And the visual was just poof, gone. And it was there, and then it wasn't, visually, on radar, and otherwise. And it was those types of stories that kept me on the edge of my seat as we were, fishing or whatever it was. So I think as a kid, or at least for me, like I was drawn to not like I was drawn to interest. Like if someone had an interest in me and something that I was interested in, I was drawn to that, and I think that's so important for kids, especially like nurturing interests, but also providing that attention or connection, like communication. And just my granddad always treated me with respect and as an adult as I could be in that moment. Let's put it to you that way. He's not treating me like an adult when I'm 8, but he's treating me like a big kid 8, not a little kid 8. And so I respected that so much, and he's always done that for everybody that I've ever seen him interact with. So by far my role model. Just turned 86 yesterday. I hope he keeps kicking for a long time.
So he was sharing all these stories with you growing up, like you were a young boy and you should talking about UFOs, and that's so cool. Yeah, just to be open and honest with, especially with a child about something like that. And I'm assuming he wasn't like, oh yeah, I know what that was, right? Like he
had no idea.
We're not alone here, right? Yeah.
But it did enough to pique my curiosity.
But even greater, That's during the height of, the stigma, the giggle factor, So, to even do that, it's opening up you to honesty, truth of experience in, ways that can negatively affect you. So that's just a beautiful thing to give you, to walk against that grain.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, he did a lot for speaking that truth, and showing me that it's okay to do that no matter what. He's got some crazy stories from West Virginia. He told one yesterday about almost getting involved in the mob, but he just was like a curious kid, and he had his binoculars, and there was some mob activity going on, and he started writing down license plates, and writing down descriptions of guys that were going in and out of things, and he went to go take that to the police and told his dad first, and his dad told a buddy, and the buddy came in that night and was like, we just saved your life, kid. It was like one of those type situations. And, he's just a great storyteller and just an honest guy and just one of those dudes, one of a kind, hope not last of a dying breed, but he was born in 36, so he wasn't the greatest generation, but right in the middle and after that, man. So, and embodies it.
What quality do you most admire in a woman?
This was a hard one. Out of all the questions, this might have been the hardest one. Yeah, I was on a bike ride earlier. I was like, man, that number 11 is. I think there's something. You didn't ask what you find the most sexy, or what there's a bunch of other questions that could have been asked. But when it's what quality do you admire most in a woman, it's the confidence that comes from that woman being empowered and being authentically expressed. So what I mean by that is like radical authenticity that comes from a place of true confidence and not trying to hide something, or not trying to get over something or heal from something or something along those lines. Like just loving being them. That's just a perfect energy and an amazing energy to be around. I've had relationships where that wasn't the case. I've been in, coincidentally enough, it's a mirror, I didn't love myself in a lot of those relationships either. And so, I can see that dynamic, but when someone has true confidence and is empowered and has a voice and can speak from that voice, that's one of the things I admire most. And every woman looks better in a sundress. Personal preference, personal opinion. I'm from the South. It's summertime. Maybe I'm biased because of those two factors. It's confirmation bias of walking around Richmond this afternoon, but every woman looks better in a sundress, period.
I would agree with that. Yeah. But absolutely. But the confidence thing itself is also like, that allows for that individual to be a rock in the relationship, and because it's a source of strength,
And I think that I also want to add consistency to that. I think consistency is safe and secure and thus sexy, in my opinion. And, my partner Ruslana is just so consistently and authentically shows up as herself. And that's, it doesn't, a bad day at work doesn't change that, and it's just who she is. And so I just admire that quality so much. And I was thinking of that in her when I answered this.
What is the most courageous thing you have ever done or seen in your life?
Alien story time. For real though. I've teased 2 of them. I don't know what the conduit of love thing was. I don't know what my granddad saw. But there were a couple things I could have gone with here. I haven't ever seen somebody save someone from a burning building. I was going to say, I'm really starting to see good parents as being super freaking courageous, moms and dads that show up and provide and are there emotionally and physically and otherwise for their kids. That's some courageous shit in today's world. So, and I'm really starting to see that and view that as being very courageous. But I'm going to tell this story because the way that myself and my dear friend Dan handled this, I would view as either I was in a state of total shock or we had a lot of cojones and were very courageous. So this is January 21st, 2012. It's winter. I am in my financial planning career. I'm with a gentleman by the name of Dan. He's a couple years older than me, so I'm probably like 25. He's like 29, 30, no bullshit New Yorker dude, business guy, like slicked hair, suit. I'm in a suit. We're rocking financial planning stuff. We're 3 hours west of Richmond in this little town outside of Roanoke, Virginia. We decided not to take the interstate home because we were kind of down and south anyway, so we're going to take one of the little back roads back to Richmond. It's 8 p.m. It's cold. It's dark. It's winter. My phone was dead. I'd been texting all day. Dan was driving in his Altima, right? So, he was driving. I was texting. My phone was dead. Dark road, dark night, no moon. Don't see a lot of cars out. Don't see any cars for a while. And in fact, Dan's phone starts to act up. He looks down at his phone. He goes, dude, my bars just got sucked out. It's like, what do you mean? He goes, well, I was at 3 bars and now I'm at no bars and it's blinking. And I was like, weird. And he said, I'm going to turn off my phone in case we get into an accident or something and we need it. So it's like, totally fair, right? Smart thing to do. 2012. He turns off his phone. We drive for a little bit. He's telling a story and I'm sitting back, kind of leaning my chair back, and I'm looking up out through the front of the windshield. And I see 2 lights, 2 white lights, and they're right next to each other and they're moving weird, right? Moving weird. And I thought they were white and I'm looking at them and I'm like, no, holy shit, those are red. It's like, why are those red lights moving like that? And they're like airplane at 30,000 feet / like satellite distance height. Right? They're way up. And kudos to my grandfather, I'm looking up and I'm noticing stuff and I see that it's weird. And so I never take my eyes off of this thing. And these 2 red lights over the next minute or two, funky movements, get bigger, get lower to the ground, like start to descend completely. I'm like, what is going on? And again, I've never took my eyes off of them to the point where now they're about ground level over to the left of where we are, and cue in scene where I'm looking under Dan's arm like this, up underneath his arm, the single arm drive stance. And he looks at me, he's like, dude, what the hell are you doing? Like, I interrupted a story trying to smell his armpit, basically trying to see this thing. Right. And I'm like, dude, do you not see these 2 red lights over there? And he looks over there and he sees them and he's like, yeah, the cell phone tower. I'm like, that's not a cell phone tower. Those red lights were just like 30,000 feet up in the air. And he's like, no, dude, get out of here, man. Shut up, right? And, 10 seconds go by. And the car turns, or I guess the road turns, and we turn the car with it. And it opened up from this wooded area where this was basically like red lights through a bunch of trees. The road opened up into a big field for like a mile or 2 or whatever. And like straight ahead, right in front of us, right over the road, probably 200 feet over the road, 150 feet over the road, were those 2 red lights. And they weren't a cell phone tower. We turned the corner. Dan goes into, what the fuck is that? What the fuck is that? What the fuck is that? Right? I go into, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And in front of us, totally stationary in the sky, again, directly over the road, lit enough by those 2 lights that we can see what it is for lack of a better term, and just because we're on air and there's no other way to say it, was a spaceship, was a UFO, big one, not little tiny like saucer UFO. This is like mothership UFO size, stuck in the air, cemented in the air, and we're driving right at it, probably at like 45, 50 miles an hour. And Dan is still on his repeat, what the fuck is that? I tell him, he starts to speed up. right? Like just stomps the accelerator. I'm like, like lean back in the seat. And I'm like, slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down. Right. So he slows down. He's like, should I stop? I'm like, don't stop. I don't know why we didn't stop. But we slowed down. I rolled down the window and I'm starting to like run questions in my head at this time. I was like, okay, it used to move. I was moving all the way up there, got all the way down here, and now it's stopped and it's not moving at all. Like not an inch, not a sway, not a rock, not an up and not a down, not a back, not a forth. It's stuck in the air. So like, all right, let's see if it's making any sounds. Right. I'm waiting to hear an engine. I'm waiting to hear like some thrusters or some helicopter or some like burner or something. I just want to hear some sounds. Right. So I'm like, slow down, Dan. He slows to like 20 miles an hour. I roll down the window of the car. I'm sitting on the outside of the car with my hand on the oh shit, handle inside. Like my butt's on the seat, my hand's inside, my head's out the car. And the only sound that I hear, y'all, is just crisp, beautiful whoosh of the night winter air at 20 miles an hour in a car. Nothing. Silent. And at this point, it's been like 30 seconds. It was a half mile away. We're driving 50 miles an hour down to 20 miles an hour, and we're about to go underneath this thing, and there's nothing we can do. And I just remember just like resigning to it and just like looking up and being underneath it and just, oh my God. And just driving again directly underneath it, like drop a rock from its middle and it would hit us in the dead center of our windshield. And we kept driving. I don't know why we didn't stop, but we didn't stop. And I just turned around and I just stayed in my view the whole time, and ended up losing it out of sight. It never moved. It had a little red light on the back, and Dan kept driving. And I kind of sunk back into my seat. We didn't say anything for probably 20 minutes. Long time. And he finally takes a big breath and goes, grips the steering wheel. Well, that changes everything. And I start like dying laughing because it was a perfect icebreaker to this. And we both were like, what the fuck is that? Like, what did we just experience? What did we just do? Common questions. I don't think we lost time. I don't know. I got back and 10% of me thought that once I charged my phone and got back to my apartment in the city that I was going to be visited by the Men in Black, or like some like the aliens themselves, be like, don't tell anybody about this or else you're dead, or something like that. And that didn't happen. Right. I told my family at family dinner later on that weekend, and my first thing my dad did was laugh and say, oh, did you check your butt? Like probing. Right. And that didn't happen. My granddad said, it was probably a hot air balloon, and then I'm like, no, man. And I told him more. I gave him the whole story, and he gave me a wink and said, I believe you, man. I have no idea what that is. Right. To this day, I have yet to see anything close that resembles it in any of the UFO docs or anything else that's out there. It was before, like when I was in the U-Haul, that was a non-physical experience that happened. Like I couldn't see or touch or feel anything, but I didn't see anything, right? I just felt it. This, like, if I had an arm, I could have tossed a baseball up at it and hit it type thing. And it was huge. So us not shitting our pants and us not freaking out. And for me, I think not being afraid, and I don't know why I wasn't afraid, but I wasn't afraid, like really at all. I was more shocked, intrigued, surprised, went into problem solving mode. And frankly, I think that's why they showed themselves to us, if that's what they ended up doing, or that's what that ended up being. But dude, by far the most unbelievable thing that has ever happened to me in my life. I've told that story once before on a podcast, and every time I tell it, it's like I was just there, man. Dan and I text once or twice a year. He's still a friend of mine. It's not like one of my BFFs or anything, but he texts me once or twice a year. We grill out every now and then and just talk about it, but thank God I wasn't alone. Like, can you imagine me coming back and telling that story and have no one to corroborate it with?
Well, listen, that's a beautiful story. And I say this, it's a huge, wonderful gift. Because that's an experience that if everybody had this type of experience, then we would be living, functioning, doing science differently, philosophizing. There would be so many things about how we view or function and move within the world, or the things that we consider. And that is amazing because you have that. Whether any scientist or anybody is going to believe you or give credence, it does not matter, because for you, that experience solidifies an existence and potential and realities that others don't have. And that's amazing. That is really stinking cool.
Thank you. Yeah, but you nailed it. You hit the nail on the head on that. I can't wait to listen to that back, because it's a knowing. It's like a real knowing. You know, and I took astronomy in high school thinking it was going to be looking at pictures of stars. And it was a lot of math, and that really surprised me and it threw me for a loop. But I took it again in college because I had just taken it in high school and figured I knew some of this stuff and thought I might be able to get a decent grade. And the concept of the numbers behind our universe, our known universe, is just mind-bogglingly insane. And to have that knowing that there is something here and that it's benevolent, at least this one, right? If there's good in the universe, there's evil in the universe. I get that, you know, but whatever I saw or experienced or, you know, was presented with, or whatever reality or hallucination or whatever, right? Like it gave me that knowing, as you said, Adam, of really truly understanding that, like, we are not the center of the universe as we thought for all but the last 500 years, you know, or at least Western society did before Galileo. There's a lot of other stuff out there, a lot of mysteries. Makes it interesting.
So how long did it take you to drive under it?
Probably 3 seconds, 3 or 4 seconds.
Yeah.
At 25, 30 miles an hour. Again, not a math guy, but
right.
Somebody can do that and tell us how big it was approximately. So, but
yeah, that's an awesome story. We just had a guest on the show that found, or is doing research on these alien carvings that are popping up in Mexico. I know this isn't an audio only podcast, but I came across this at a local rock and gem show. Wow. But yeah, we're definitely not alone.
Where are people finding those? Like,
Ojuelos.
What's the 30-second on that?
They're coming out of Ojuelos. It's a area in Mexico. There's a mountain there, I believe, and these, I guess, they've been popping out of the ground since the 90s, and the government refuses to recognize them as old, just because they have depictions like this on them. Right. And so their reasoning is, there were no ancient aliens, so these can't possibly be artifacts.
Artifacts, yeah. Wow.
There's been plenty of studies done on them, and there's evidence to the contrary, I would say. But awesome story.
Thank you.
Question 13. What does it mean to be a man in today's world?
Such a good question, and such a key question, man. So my professional work is story work, working one-on-one with people using the Enlifted method to work stories. And I'm a healthy holistic habits coach. I've combined those two. I still do my story work one-on-one with anybody, and my main professional business that I have right now is a health mastery program for men. So it's teaching executive and professional men, rising men. We got a couple different levels, 2 levels, how to get healthy while they work and helping them master their health in a year without sacrificing work or family time. So these are for guys. This program is for guys who value high-level coaching, one-on-one coaching. If that's not at a price point that is feasible, then It's for guys who value accountability, connection, community, and toolkits / resources and education behind these health topics. So we built a program for men to fix that bucket in their life that's often neglected. And same with women and mothers, but especially for men in their careers and men as providers. They neglect the health. That's the last bucket that gets filled a lot of times. And, health is wealth / for feeling better about ourselves physically, mentally, otherwise, and just feel better on a regular basis, we can pour from a much broader, bigger cup. What it means to me, a man in today's society, a good man in today's society, is one that is both courageous and empathetic. It's that mix and match and expression of the divine masculine and the divine feminine together, right? We need action. We need that warrior energy. We need people to fight up and stand up against, tyranny and wrongdoing and evil and, all the stuff that we choose to ignore, question two, right? And everything and otherwise, right? But that energy is not a great energy to be in at home in the bedroom or with your wife or with your kids necessarily all the time, right? We need that magician energy. We need that creative energy. We need that lover energy where it's empathetic and kind and compassionate, right? And embodying that as the king, as a generator, as a someone who can look over the kingdom and provide for the kingdom and provide security and love and growth for the kingdom and then community. Like, we need more kings in our community, and men who can rise up to the standards of holding themselves accountable as a man and, moving out of those shadow elements, moving out of those boyhood states, showing up, being consistent, saying your piece, whether you believe in what I believe or whether you believe on the totally other side, like, say it, stand up. And, it is my partner Rue has a book coming out in 2023. She got a deal with Inner Traditions, which is an awesome company out of Vermont. But her book is on the 12-stranded DNA, right? And so it's a big look at all this stuff. But she talks a lot about the divine masculine and the divine feminine and how in today's society the strong man is as few and far between as ever, because it's often connected with toxic masculinity, which is a very real thing and something to stand against at all times, right? And there's a push down of men so that, in many ways across societies, I think from the top down, so that there are less strong warriors and less strong kings and less strong lovers and less strong magicians to stand up and oppose and stand up to tyranny, and so I think there's a war against good, strong men. Testosterone rates are down 70% since our grandfathers' days. Like, we are literally less men than our grandfathers from a hormonal standpoint, statistically. And yet we're at a time now where statistically the average male over 40 has less than one friend that they can talk to. 0.08 or 0.8 friends that they can call outside their spouse or immediate family members if they're going through hard times, right? So, I'm going to close this question with this comment and statement. This is something that I feel compelled to bring up, and perhaps this is me stepping into that, what I believe means to be a man in today's society. I had a friend who killed himself a little while back, and by all accounts, he was totally successful, happy, healthy, good dude, decent guy. Hadn't known him too long, but good dude, decent guy. By all accounts, things were pretty solid. Put it to you that way. And his good friends would tell you the same thing. He's in our circle. And we don't talk about mental health enough as men. We don't talk about our struggles often enough as men. We often don't allow ourselves to cry or to struggle or to work through stuff. I went through something a month ago, a couple weeks ago. It was real funk, right? Funkiest I felt funky-wise in 5, 6, 8, 10 years, right? I noticed myself in a negative feedback loop and a negative thought pattern, and I had a suicidal thought where I was never in danger, never have been, never would be. I know that it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem, and yet I had that thought, and it scared me, and it woke me up to this fact because very recently this had happened to my friend, and luckily I know how to downshift myself. I box breathed. I said I love myself. I went through my affirmation list, got into a nice parasympathetic state, and then I went to bed. I woke up the next day and I felt a lot better. Still not great, so I called a friend. I asked for help. Got together and went on a walk with my buddy Dave Coleman, I lived 5 houses down since I was 8 years old. So we grew up together, still one of my best friends. And, I just, on this walk, just basically bitched for however long I was there. That's what it felt like to me. Bitched, vented, just let loose. And as a coach, I don't often do that. I think a lot of coaches don't do that as well. As we take on a lot of stuff and we often just, hey, we're supposed to be good. We're the coach. We're the helper. We're the leader. We're the father. We're the whatever. And we don't necessarily allow ourselves that opportunity, or at least I wasn't allowing myself that opportunity to feel and to talk about my shit, So I did, and I felt again tremendously better. And so, over the past couple of weeks, as I've gotten out of that little funk and gotten myself back up, out, and at 'em, as they say, feeling a lot more creative, feeling a lot more motivated, feeling a lot more clear. After having that conversation with a couple friends and hearing about my other buddy and talking to, my friend in my deep, deep moment, I just want to share with anybody who's listening, you are loved, you are worthy, you have people that you can call and talk to. And, there's always a tomorrow. It's always a tomorrow. I've utilized this a lot with my guys and gals who I'm working with and going through addiction or recovery. A lot of times right out of bond, right out of jail, I work with intensives in the recovery and addiction community, and I do story work with them one-on-one, and just quit tomorrow, not today, never today, keep going today. And it works for them. Today they're going to win that battle. Tomorrow, who knows? They'll deal with that tomorrow, but today they're going to win every day. And so again, I just want to say that as men, we got to have these conversations. Check up on your friends, tell them you love them, call them, tell them, really tell them, tell them that they mean a lot to you and that you are there for them. And then pick up the phone if you need it. Invest in yourself, invest in the communities. And I believe the suicide prevention number is 988 now in the US. You can call or text 988 and talk to somebody immediately. So that is my PSA on the back end of what it means to be a man in today's society. And again, to sum that up, be willing to talk about hard shit. It's not the most fun thing to publicly tell however many people listening that, hey, I thought about killing myself last week or last month or whatever, but the more times we have these conversations, the more lives we can save, and the more often we can start to normalize the fact that a lot of times people don't feel 100%, and that's okay, and that there are resources out there for folks.
Beautiful, dude. Beautiful.
Yeah, I'm honored that you feel comfortable enough to say that on this show, and you're absolutely right that it's something that's not talked about as much as it should be, because the thoughts like this, or even the action of suicide, it's really gone up recently. And the only other guest to touch on this beforehand was Jonas Ketterle. He does the Ceremonial Great Cacao, and I love cacao because it works with your heart space and your heart chakra, right? But just drawing attention to the mental health in general and suicide, and having a community of people that you can call and rely on and talk to, even, hotline or whatever, right? Like that, it's more like, I don't know. I guess my point is that it's not really presented too often, and it's nice to shed some light on it because it's more prevalent than we would like to think it is. Just like another horrible thing that's more prevalent than we like to think it is sexual abuse of females by, in growing up. 4 out of 5 women have had some kind of trauma around that, in their upbringing. So.
Yeah, I mean that's a sobering statistic, and you're right. And again, I think the more that these can be brought to light in safe spaces, the more often we can heal from these things and start to have more conversations around that. I mean, that's perpetuated by weak men. That particular statistic, weak and cowardly men, largely, I imagine. And so, what is the best combatant to that? It's not less men overall, or whatever. It's more strong, capable, courageous men. So I'm all for building that in whatever capacity that we can.
Yeah, and ones that are comfortable talking about it too is a big step in that.
And even if it's not comfortable talking about it on a podcast, like talk to your friends, talk to your spouse about it, right? Like talk to your brother or your sister or your folks, or bring it up the next time you're in a friend group. And it doesn't need to be a public declaration in any way.
Absolutely.
And I think that's important to realize that there's a progression to a lot of this stuff. So meet yourself where you're at.
Well, that was an awesome wrap up, I think. Very succinct and very important to emphasize. I can't wait. I think that I'm going to get in touch with you later on, maybe for some one-on-one work possibly. And Adam, do you have any last thoughts?
No, just tons of thanks for spending your time. Spending your time with us. I say it here often. It means everything, and it's the most valuable thing you could give anybody. So we appreciate that. I'm sure people are going to find wisdom in this, and just thank you for giving that.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate that, Adam, and thank you, Bill, as well, and both of y'all for your time as well. You're the one giving it, and being creative with it, which is super rad. So thank you both, and I'm just honored to be here, man.
I wanna Hawaii. I wanna Hawaii. Yo what? 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 I wanna Hawaii. I wanna Hawaii. Yo
Why
what?
is one man rich and another man poor? Why we ain't satisfied? Why we gotta have more? Why your suicide rates on the rest so high? Why I tell you the truth but you say don't lie? Why is being a good father at an all-time low? Why is it acceptable? Yo, why? I don't know. Why she blame him and he blame her? It's useless. Ask yourself this question. Why you making excuses? Why do parents gotta bury their kids? Why we text and drive, not caring how scary it is? Why it's so hard to forgive and leave the past behind? And if you did, then that's divine. Why don't you help your brother when you see him fall? Why do we act like God don't see it all? Why do we call them black, them white, them Asians and use labels? Now that's racism.
I wanna Hawaii.
Why?
I wanna Hawaii. Yo what? I wanna Hawaii.
Why?
I wanna Hawaii. Yo what? I wanna Hawaii.
Why?
I wanna Hawaii. Yo what? I wanna Hawaii.
Why?
I wanna Hawaii. Yo
Why is
what?
there innocent people locked up for life, while some people can't say nothing nice? Why do we always gotta question what all of it means? And why won't you follow your dreams? Tell me why. right when you took my dad? Why'd you let me see my grandpa cry? And tell me why, and why do you choose to hide, even though you was born to fly? And tell me why, and why don't we turn from all the hate? And why don't we learn from all mistakes? Why do I keep on wrecking these fat beats? And teachers don't make more than professional athletes? And why, and why, and why, and why, and why, and why?
I don't wanna hold it. I don't wanna hold it. Why? I don't wanna hold it. I don't wanna hold it. Why? I don't wanna hold it. I don't wanna hold it. Why? I don't wanna hold it. I don't wanna hold it. Why?
This should be considered entertainment and not therapy. We hope you benefit from our resources available at 13questionspodcast.com. Thank you for listening.